93-114, items 1 through 68. When one man's mind realized what he was trying to do with consciousness, it told him, hey man, save yourself some needless sweat. Just slap a new name on it and forget it. Of thus are the indices of history books proudly composed. Life requires no commentary, but now that it has man, it's sure going to get one. The simplistic pay homage to their genes, the sophisticated to their culture, while a few just want to tear up their old bus schedule completely. P.S. If you're either simplistic or sophisticated, don't bother to tell me that you don't get it. M is for Maxim and also Miss Q. A passionate mental life of man is a thing of beauty and a joy not realized. Caution, class, and be very careful in your travels. Remember that all dirty words rhyme with one another. While reading a tome regarding mental matters extraordinaire, a lad came upon this line: if you do not complete the journey, 'tis better if you never even begin. And he said to himself, transcendental hairballs. Would it not be better still if none of us had even ever thought of it? On some worlds, the qualitative question of better remains open. Showbiz and life news. Those with the least talent make the most to do over their name. Going past the local neighborhood of morality, a man suddenly thought, having fun at someone else's expense is not the problem. The challenge in truth is how to have some at your own. Only no-eyed men in a 3D world would say, I don't take no shit off life. Where do they think refuge is going to be put in a closed system? If you're the sort to suspect that this piece of info could be used in regards to how you believe you operate your own internal mental landfill, you're correct, Mr. Echo. You're correct. Rather than deal with the matter of consciousness, one man developed back problems. Is credit not due where credit is due? Who but man was intelligent enough to conceive of the idea of gods? Ethel, honey, what does that have to do with lower back pains? They say that to know Buddhism, you must know Buddha, and Christianity, Christ. So where does that put knowing you? When he had reached the age of local maturity, one man began going by the name of, hey, you cheap whore. He says he might as well, since that's what life's going to end up calling him anyway. Lit news. Metaphors write themselves. Regarding the matter of survival, and post-survival, would you prefer to be comely or conscious? As they whizzed down Highway 49 on a fun-filled Friday night, Buford unzipped his head and hung his brain out the car window, explaining that he was trolling for new ideas. Or, as the consciousness of Eve said to the mind of Adam, yuck, that's disgusting. Put that thing back in your pants. History waits for many things, but getting laid's not one of them. You have to do that one for yourself. Even if the birds do not understand the cat's original purr, they will later do a quite similar imitation based firmly thereon. A man stopped and looked at himself and at his fellow mortals, at his home, this planet, then back to the book in hand as he repeated the words he had just read. Refugee. Refugee. What a curious term. And stranger yet, refugee problem. How can it be called a problem when it is the native state of us all? End quote. The serious crimps of sequential chronology. Fun flies when you're having time. Some have said that the problem with the mind is in its attachments, but note that without something to latch onto, there is no mind. This is a free country. Make of that what you will. A chap writes to complain. I do not like hearing the insinuation that man lives in a kind of trance. Forgive me if my handwriting is illegible as I wrote this in my normal state. Plagiarism. Everyone's mind's middle name. Don't listen to him, Alonzo. I read that same thing in a book last week. The routine acceptance of plagiarism. Yet another way life keeps man in check. Alonzo. Hey, Alonzo, are you still there? Post-survival cannibalism answers to three names. Stagnation, stability, and progress. Hey, ain't you just got to love a reality that can take one idea and use it not only as itself, but also as its own opposite and its potential future as well? Is that not why those who understand so cherish man? Super science news. Remember I said super. The human mind is a self-correcting system in that it's hardly ever wrong. Or so it thinks. The non-spiritual, to continue their charade of spirituality, must have spiritual heroes. Concluded one man, the worst thing about being of ordinary consciousness is that you must continually try and explain yourself. Added moi. When this alone becomes cosmically unbearable, you may be getting somewhere. Creativity news. There is no such thing as an original philosophy. There is original thinking which can lead to point-blank consciousness, which in turn can leave waste products that others turn into maps. The myopic can easily take dwarfs with giants growing out of their backs to be some original life form. Within 65 years, 65-year-old eyes are likely to see the local landscape as static, which is why the few must forever look far away in a secret direction. Okay, if not secret, unlikely. Each day for one man began always with these words. It cannot be emphasized too strongly. A brief tour of our equity and mental courts. Fair's fair unless you're a bear. Then justice is a matter of who's on top. Don't have any legal groupies? Life told a bunch of people, look, just settle down. Find yourselves a good, fake, passionate hobby and pretend that it works. Epistemology news. Is there anything a person really and truly and absolutely knows If there is anything a person really and truly and absolutely knows, they can never prove it. And this from the school's class schedule update. Tomorrow's Search for the Truth has been canceled. In his relentless search for the terminus of knowledge, one man began forcing himself to mentally rhyme logic with maggots. Real mysticism is a one-man affair, which is why people correctly mistrust cults. One man's lyrical lament. I can stop myself from smoking, keep myself from drink, can even verbally keep my peace, but can't control my think. Behavior, even bad behavior, thus remains a more popular hobby than awareness. One man put his own hand on his own knee with the plea, O neural potential, wilt thou sleepest with me? Two beings from another world were talking, and one of them said, you can tell the size of a man's passion by the size of his awareness. One man's consciousness said to his mind, I do wish you wouldn't undress in front of me. And the mind replied, why? Does it make you horny? No, disgusted. Life doesn't care much what you do individually, just so long as you abide by the general rules and stick to the main highway. Now, here's yet another way to determine if you're adequately civilized without having to spend a bundle. If you can't tell the difference between your brain and a brain tumor without professional assistance. The local is to the mind as the universal is to consciousness. One man's mind one day said to him, would you care to know what I think about what you've been attempting to do regarding your overall consciousness? And as the man struggled to turn and walk away, he replied, well, most assuredly, and when you have the time, why don't you write it down and mail it to me? And be sure on the outside of the envelope to write constructive criticism within, so as I'll be sure to get that it gets delivered to the proper place. One man spent most of his life trying to get his attention. The motto of this one planet is, post-survival, the only form of pure fun is talk. Hey Ethel, honey, where do you want to go on vacation this year? There is a rhythm to physical life, even so the mental one. But in the latter case, most people prove to be somewhat club-footed, spastic, tempo-deaf, if not downright dead on their feet. Well, geez, Mr. Welk, won't you just give us all the cerebral blues, why don't you? Or else maybe Mr. Astaire's phone number. Being a critic of life is surely one of man's highest callings, since it is also his most futile. Waking up every morning wondering what to do about your mind and consciousness is the burden of but a few. Tip: if you continually repaint a burden, its weight will change from day to day. Secret info that does not either frighten or confuse the ordinary sure ain't secret enough or informative. After he was old enough to have some understanding as to what was going on and to realize what was apparently expected of him regarding his inherited position within the collective, one man looked around him and said, well, I've been hired and wired, but not inspired. One person's observation: I've been fucked and I've been loved and can tell no difference between. Hey, don't look at me. Life made him think it. Dogs take scheduled medication given them by humans as being some form of ritualistic initiation. Men, lacking such visible masters, apply religion to themselves. During the festivities at one city's annual celebration of things continental, one man pointed to his head and exclaimed, "I may be full of shit, but at least I'm full of my shit." And everyone laughed so heartily that life threw a pie at him. Most men's philosophies are either an attempt to explain away something they dislike or else to rationalize some failing they have. If you're not harsh with your mind, it won't be harsh with you. Hey, didn't you read that same item last week except it said objects instead of your mind? What's with repeating it? You are correct, sir, but the mind lobby weaseled its way in. When the rigors of reoccurring bad times would get to be too much for him, this one man would respond by standing in his front yard and screaming at the top of his voice, "I demand to speak to Clyde Bevins." He notes that with the continuing increase in liquor taxes and the distance from his house to the nearest church, this has proven to be most cost effective. Believing you're a humanitarian and that your goal is to become even more charitable and your purpose to serve your fellow man sure can save a lot of energy and make you miss a lot of instructive fun. First is man's potential for consciousness, which is silent. Then comes the mind, which gives consciousness a tongue. Then for a few, the possibility of another consciousness, which is again nonverbal. Question: how can there be any possibility of anything new within a closed system? Better question: why would a closed system allow those within it to even conceive of such an idea? Mental note. Note that those who make the questions can make lesser questions or better questions. Therefore, why not make your own? News for artists. Although Philistines may run the world, they don't enjoy it as much as you would if you did. A man pondered, if we are tied too tight to our mind, then is the mind still lashed too closely? Then a man pondered, if we are tied too tight to the mind, then is the mind still lashed too closely to our genetic past? And if so, what the possible hell can we do about it? Yes, boys and girls, what the possible hell indeedy. If there is some form of collective practice that will awaken a man's full conscious potential, there are some who want it so bad that they will not therein participate. If you understand this, Buddha number 1 would be proud of you, dude. Just as a cliche is not a cliche if you have to explain it, neither is new info taken to be actual knowledge by the collective if you in some way must reassure them about it. Life does expect one thing from everybody, and that is that you die in your sleep. This month's tubular top 40 tune from the mouth of one mortal. Stunt my growth, cramp my mind. I am man, hear me whine. All truth is bullshit, all bullshit, someone's truth. Inside of every wolf is a coyote, inside of every coyote a cat, inside of every cat a bird, and inside of every bird a wolf, and that's the truth. Idiots fight for principle, the ordinary for profit. Where does that leave us? Life announced to one man, "My act is totally unrehearsed." And the man responded, "Rats, I was just going to say that." Some sporting news by way of definition. Life, the only foot race in which the race conquers the contestants. Man, the only contestants that life allows to believe otherwise. Otherwise, what things always are. And now some new info by way of inquiry. Which might better lead to new consciousness? A mind stable or one on a ramble? Those who cannot comprehend the present are continually inclined to draw a parallel between now and some past period. Historical data proves nothing about today except that those wielding it are know-nothings. If the future can be discerned, it will not be by those forever looking back. Man's mind and his consciousness reside in two different time zones. People who need words or a philosophy to live by have only partially lives like everyone else, but they want to be sure they keep it that way. Face it, all myths are just myths. But hey, Mr. Civilization, so is everything else. At no great risk can you, with anything, dance part-time except with yourself. And to music like this. News about news. The simple love to hear about danger. The more complex, possibilities therein. When everyone's dumb, no one's dumb. Life keeps everyone dumb. Singers may now turn to whatever damn hymn they'd like to. A history of mirrors, or else a mirrored history. Every few years, one man would say to his consciousness, "Where have you been?" Then every few months he'd ask, "Where have you been?" Then every few weeks he'd say to it, "Where have you been?" And eventually every few days he would ask, "Where have you been?" And finally every few minutes he would remember and say to his consciousness, "Where have you been?" And beyond that, I will offer no further descriptions for you to reflect on. One day, while out drinking beer in the sun, Life said to some people, "Hey, you can talk about me all you want to. One thing leads to another, but not genetically a father to a brother, unless we're speaking of mental DNA and of those totally unsatisfied by routine family life. The jolt should be to realize that man could sail on the open seas, but is mainly confined to submarines. Mythical motto of one legendary Homo alertus: grow or grow old. News a few might use. Try and remember this. Life is not your enemy. Life is not your friend. Life is life's friend. And that about wraps it up. Well, now one more item more suitable for general consumption. The mind needs drugs. And oh yes, consciousness needs more consciousness. And so we let the matter end by noting life has no best friend. But hey, it's got you, and you do too. You remember last time we were talking about that the personal life, the post-survival life of man, everything within the great opening, not the Wild West, Not your grandparents taking over a spread in Oklahoma, but inside of the nervous system itself, above up there, the great open space. There is no collective, there is no codified, there is no stabilized, there is no predictable, damn near no traces of any passionate life. And I was going through examples, but to show you the way life has balanced everything out as usual, I was mentioning sports and all forms of entertainment and religion, romance, anything that you could qualify as being non-essential to absolute physical survival would be that life. And within that area, there is no real passion. It's why men, what? Fake it. You know, like this kind of shit. Like, this is going to be the last time. This offer will not be repeated. I mean, the factory said rebates up until the last of this month, and that's it, folks. And you start thinking, you reach for your coat, and you don't even know rebate to what? What, a car? A box of cereal? You've got to get on the ground floor. It just struck me, there is a beautiful example that I didn't bring up. You don't know what it is? All right, don't tickle me. Professional wrestling. Because it fits in the middle of everything, somewhere between religion, sports, and, you know, vaudeville. But this, on this basis. Last I heard, it was still one of the biggest draws in the United States, if not the world. Just the gross money receipts. And you've surely seen it on TV, people, you know, hooping and hollering and waving more banners. And then you have also on the more serious side, people. Now we're talking about people who have got to be child prodigies. Now we're talking about people with a kind of insight that will astound you, that these people come up and say, it is my contention that this is at least partially staged. This is not actual pure sport. Hey. You know, we worry about the general level of intelligence. Think about that. And they make the news. I mean, they periodically do. Even I hear about somebody said, and they'll make some social commentary like, I cannot believe it. And they will even use the example I did. They'll say, can you believe that it's now grossing X millions or billions of dollars a year? And they'll show some film clip. If it's some guy making a comment about this, some critic. And it'll show all these people, you know, jumping up and down, screaming and hollering, and some guy rushing out dressed up, you know, like who knows what. You know, like a pregnant elephant or, you know. And the people are screaming and hollering. And the commentator said, he starts, can you believe? And he'll say the same kind of thing I did. Like, he might not be that crude or that direct, but he would say something like, it makes you have serious concern about our educational system, that those people, you know, the film we're looking at, you know, Mr. Interviewer, this was taken right there in Fort Worth or Milwaukee, and there were 55,000 people. They paid, look at that. Look at them screaming and hollering and treating this like those two guys fighting. They go from city to city. It'll be the same thing tomorrow night. And they're treating that as though it's something real and serious. It just, I fear for the history of man. Think about that. He says that. See, I've already beat him to it. You know, if you're going to fear for the history of man, it's somebody that, you know, his brilliant discovery in life is, this seems to be, you know, some form of entertainment as opposed to just pure sport. They're not actually trying to kill each other. You know, well, you know, hit me with some dirty socks in the locker room. You know. The point being, do you see the justice? The balance is always, you can have it both ways. You can have a group of people that this one man represents of saying, well, so-and-so in life is why I keep bringing up critics, because it has a specific area and it has nothing to do with actual social critics or movie critics or reviewers of CDs in a magazine. It has to do with that other part of the general binary force that runs life, that here it is. People are desperate enough, as witnessed by religion, if you want the first one, to try and find something to give their intellectual life some passion, something resembling the passion of sex, of hunger, good sleep, a good run, the survival life of the body. Desperate enough that they will end up out there cheering. It's not but a three-dimensional soap opera. But then also, life doesn't let it go at that. It can't at this level. It then has people say, well, I don't know so much about this. And to have what seems to be intellectual comments, criticisms. Something should be done. We should probably pass some state laws, if not federal law, forcing these people that run these so-called wrestling matches to just say something like, you know, vaudeville. Yeah. This is a shame, them misleading people like that. You want to try one more time to think on just a relative scale, who is the stupidest? The guy, you know, this guy, he thinks, God, look at the unwashed masses intellectually. Look how easily these people are fools. Some people dress up and guys dye their hair, you know, yellow, build some big muscles, and they scream real loud like, I'll kill him tonight. We don't believe that for a second. And he thinks the people in the audience do, or if they do, or if they don't, that they care. Do you follow? It's got nothing to do specifically with wrestling or criticism. But if you take either one of the positions right quick, well, you'd be most likely probably to take his if I hadn't set it up otherwise. Or that a man can pick out something. Now, people can do it with religion. They do it with religion and say, my God, can you believe the fact that there are people who go in there and they'll light candles and they go through this ritual and they kneel and they stand up and they bow their head, and then some guy walks out dressed up, I'm talking about funny, you know, like a suit and tie or worse. You know, some kind of big old funny hat and a dress, and he waves a thing. And they all bow and they do this. And they all hang around later and drink a little coffee and they talk about it. And they think that's something serious. Now think about it. That's easy enough to do, but who's the stupidest? See, he's assuming that they take it seriously. It's bloody entertainment. It's an attempt, it's the best shot they can get to try and come up with something resembling a passionate inner life, mental life. And he says, oh boy, it just makes you think, civilization, after 5,000 years, we've gone nowhere. We still have people going in there and praying to God or whatever they believe they're doing. He thinks they're serious. Who's the stupidest? Well, of course, neither one, but I just wanted you to see that life is always balanced. There is no end. There is no objective aesthetics. There is no standard to judge man's attempt to come up with a passionate life. Post-survival. None. Whatever works is whatever life is going to keep working at that moment. And whatever happens to work with a particular person, anyone who makes a criticism of it, anyone who has any doubt of someone else's enjoyment, of anyone else's, if you doubt that someone else is taking their best shot at coming up with some passionate passing hobby to get them through 65 years, whether it's going to professional wrestling, going to art galleries, the symphony, collecting stamps, being religious, being a professional atheist and picketing churches, if you doubt that that isn't an acceptable, if you find it suitable as criticism, remember my man, I assume I made it clear, this guy that would come on a talk show or be interviewed to expose, and not just crudely, but the man's got the best interest of civilization at heart, to say, how can these people, we should all be concerned, my fellow viewers out there, that we have thousands of people going out and paying $10, $15 to see so-called professional wrestling, and it's a sham. These poor people, I don't know, they just don't have the benefit of our sophistication. I mean, I'm a graduate of Harvard, and I'm sure the other people here on the program are equally as educated. And so it's not that we're looking down our noses at these people. This is just these people of life, but they're going out there and being misled. Just remember him. You didn't get misled yourself again, did you, and start taking his side. If right now there's some contest on idiocy and density, he would win. Not them. He would win. Because for one thing, he's got credentials. He's the one doing the criticism. Those poor, stupid people. We should feel for them. It should be the obligation of us intellectually noble, the nobility of the intelligentsia, the spiritually, the artistically, the civilly enlightened, it is somewhat our responsibility to try and, I don't know, sort of wake these people up, to shake them out of that kind of outdated slumber, and then believing everything that they say, believing that these guys are trying to kill each other. Just remember that. Anytime you criticize, remember him. I don't like the quiet. I think some of you keep slipping back in, and that you're wanting to nod, so that's true. I don't know what else to do for you. It's like a man staying out in the field. You know, he's up to his ankles, you know, in ox shit, and he's out there, you know, delivering some kind of tirade, an intellectual one, about the slovenly personal hygiene of oxen. At least we leave on an unsavory note. You do understand, of course, that those doing such criticizing, that's their passionate hobby. There's nothing wrong. It's just ordinarily, a mind will take one position or the other if you had any interest in it. That you would listen and go, yeah, that's true. Perhaps if you're on the other side of a professional wrestling fan, you go, what kind of crap is that? What does he know? Some pointy-head intellectual. And it wouldn't know a good time if it came up and bit him on his scorecard. The first one had a little something to do with the idea of the passionate life. It said when one man's mind realized what he was trying to do with consciousness, his mind told him, hey man, save yourself some needless sweat. Just slap a new name on it and forget it. The trick in that related to the idea of trying to come up with a passionate life, that is what civilization is about. It's a wider limbing of what civilization is about than just zeroing in on civilization is to bring humans collectively together in such a way that they will accept self-imposed laws and morality so as to more congenially and safely abide within a close context by one another. Or it's so that groups of like-minded people, of similar cultures or races or religions, may band together so as to better protect themselves from outsiders. Or it's to increase the ability of commerce to flow freely by people living in closer proximity. You could describe civilization all kinds of ways of purpose. I was just giving you a wider one. We even hit some of those as examples. But a wider one is simply this. Civilization is a continuing attempt to come up with a passionate life for the intellect, to fill in that great open space. Oklahoma territory, and we're all in our little covered wagons. We're right down there at the survival level. And some old sourdough shoots off a gun, and we all run for it. We all whip our wagons, we rush out to try and stake out our little claim. I think I'll try professional wrestling. I think I'll become a nymphomaniac. I think I'll marry once a month. I think I'll take up sports. I think I'll watch TV and see what happens. Everyone is off and running. A man's mind. And deep in there somewhere, if you heard it, I did another history that originally we had consciousness, which was silent. Then man developed the mind, which gave tongue to consciousness. Then, I point out, if there was anything else like another level, just new consciousness, another form of consciousness, it would again become nonverbal. We won't go into the inherent topology. But within that, if you take that and then this, that a man's mind said to his conscious, or said to him, I've been watching what you've been trying to do. Let me tell you something. Save yourself some sweat. Slap a new name on it and forget it. Yeah. Since we've drug it out this far, trying to come up with a passionate life here something resembling this, which is all we've got to go by. The passion of the body, the passion of the survival level of the body is what makes the body survive. Makes sense to me? Yes. Without that passion, you're a dead man. Well, shit, you could be you'd be a Presbyterian or Republican. You're a dead man without a passion of the body. You don't have to work on it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to look for it. You do not have to try and obtain it. If the body is alive and in any degree of health, you have a passion of the body. Passion, that's it. Instead of talking about breath and blood, you can say it is passion. That you can live without a certain amount of blood, you can hold your breath. But without passion, you're a dead man. So that's all we have to go by. That is life at the survival level. But now that we're all past the survival level and we're all thinking, intellectual creatures, what is lacking is a passion. There is, at that level, at the civilized level, man lives almost totally a life of no passion. That's the way I started last time, if you recall. And it's not literally true, because he is involved now constantly with the attempt to create one, to discover one, which is all the pursuits, all forms of hobby, anything that you're doing in life that you would decide, that you would just say, well, this is not absolutely essential for my physical survival. Then whatever it is, and in most cases it's not much of anything, as we were pointing out. It's not an attack, but most people will admit, well, you know, my life now, especially when hormones begin to, a little bit, you know, that you're getting old and fat and lazy. You know, you're 21 now, 22, Jesus. But even though most people say, well, you know, my life is rather boring. What do you want? Well, I'm going out and have a beer. I'm going out with the guys down at the bar and watch the game. This amounts to the continuing attempt. I start out saying that men live a life intellectually almost of no passion, vis-a-vis the body. But what it's involved with, since there is, in a sense, no passion, not comparable, you cannot call it any passion that an ordinary man has up here, you cannot call it comparable with the passions of the body. But what he does have is the attempt, that everyone has the attempt, that they do pursue some religion, or drinking, or some combination of the two, of collecting stamps, drinking, and going to church. A little bit of everything. Maybe tinker around with your car, cut the grass, and then set your lawn on fire and think, boy, I'll never have another. But we shall assume, safely so, since I read it, this: when one man's mind realized what he was trying to do in regards to consciousness, he told him, save yourself some sweat, slap a new name on it, and forget it. That is what civilization is about. That is what the necessary form of cannibalism is about. That is why the march of progress, end of quotes, can never stop. I mean, if John Philip Sousa had time to go, is this what I had in mind? He would have been run over, or else he would have died of stagnation. You cannot stop. Criticism cannot stop. If criticism stopped, you would suddenly see the march of progress, which, let's now change metaphors on mid-hardwood floors. Yeah. If criticism stopped, instead of a march of progress, let's call it a tango of progress, you would suddenly look up and there would be one person dancing. And that's disgusting. That's not going to work. Even life won't put up with that one person trying. You got to have two. There has got to be criticism. This man's mind, realizing that it had a certain, shall we say, watch me, vested interest in what he was up to, still told him the truth. It fit the mind's own interest. But he also told him something that would work. He said, hey man, save yourself some trouble. Slap a new name on it and forget it. What the mind was saying was, slap a new name on me. Or, if you want a little bit better, he was saying, slap a new name on what you think you're trying to do. And then forget it. Because the tacit inference being, it'll work. if you'll do that, to forget it was what the mind was telling the man, slap a new name on it, and you'll get over it. You know another version? The mind tells him, oh, I know, you've been chafing at the bit. They don't let horses in the temple. You've been chafing over the bit about being a Catholic. You keep saying that doesn't satisfy you. Well, look, now don't get all excited. You know, don't go off and do something crazy. Try this. You've never done it. You always talked about it. Go over. It's just a few blocks away. Go over and visit a while with the Episcopalians. And if you really like it, maybe you were thinking about going to Europe next year. You could go over and actually visit. You know, partake of the real Church of England. Get back to the see. You follow? I was being nice. The quick version is, how about all the people that grew up being Southern Baptist or Presbyterians and now they've shaved their head and they're Buddhist? I'm talking about American people. I mean, it's all right. Come to think about it, they didn't ask me if it was all right or not. But you understand they slapped a new name on it. And now you meet some guy and you find out, you know, some Zen center right outside of Rochester. And you go up there and there's this guy with a shaved head and robes and smiling and the dots painted all over him. You look at him and his name, I don't know what it is, but you know it's not Hakamore Yakamama or something. And you look at him and you think, you're Abe Hirschberg. I went to school with you back in college. And he goes, not anymore, I'm not. It worked. I'm Mr. Fat Wrestling number 2. And you open up his mask, you pick on that, and you go, you're Abe Hirschberg again. Well, I gave it the easy way, that apparently converting from one religion to another. That's what the mind's talking about. Of course, there's another way to look at it. If you can see that, then being religious to start with is putting a name on it. It just sounds like, I know people think, well, I was almost born in my religion. But the mind is telling the man. He says, I know what it is you're up to. Of course, the mind doesn't really know, which that's another story. It knows enough that it makes it uncomfortable, which I know you haven't probably ever looked at it that way. What you think is that you're uncomfortable because you can't do more about it, which that's your version. Your mind's version is, this is irritating, you know, just... You know, all you got to do is, and every now and then you go, nah. And your mind says, how old are you, Bunky? And you think, well, you know, 30, 40, 50. And it says, well. And you're supposed to be intelligent enough to think, well, you're right, you know, for 40 years I've gone. And it says, well. And still you go, well, but Jesus, sometimes I don't know. And it says, hey, 40 years you went, right? Own your own company, 3 wives, 4 cars, a chalet somewhere, beachfront property. And you did it by. You go, yeah, but still, what you're saying is, I still do not have the passion that I originally wanted, and fool that I am, I never got over it completely. And it says, hey, save yourself some effort. All of the part being, you've gone this far by... Yeah. And it says, save yourself some effort. Slap a new name. You mean on this condition? Just slap a new name on it. Don't worry about the word. Just slap a new name. You mean on this kind of trance-like? No, just slap a new name on it. Call it something else, and you'll be all right. A few weeks later, you see the guy, and he's now a member of such and such cult. Or he says, I am now a Zen Buddhist novice monk. When he smiles, he seems happy. And you go, well, is that what you know, I know for years you've been talking about that you thought you were trying to do. Yeah, I know. And it finally struck me. I read a book, I don't know, it just hit me. His mind told him. He went, just the other day, it hit me after all these years. I'm just going to go. I didn't give away everything. They told me I didn't have to. But I am now a part of this Zen monastery. I'm a novice. I'm going to hang around there. And he feels much better. Disregarding whatever rituals and new food he's eating, or how he's changed his diet, or now he's got a shaved head. None of that's important. He says, he smiles when he said, what's happened? You look so, I am now a Zen monk. He slapped a new name on it. Of course, the real one is, theatrically speaking, I was going to, as an aside, say it's a shame to get dirty, but it's not. Screw it. When it gets real dirty, nobody can hear it anyway. Life takes care of that. The real version of this, which couldn't have been otherwise and is irrational, that is, your mind will say, hey, don't listen to that crap. The original version of putting a name on it was when the mind gave consciousness a tongue. And what was the first thing it said? We all know that. It went, I. And then after that, you fill in the blank like, I see what it. Oh, wait, I have some hesitation. I can now speak. I am now human. The original name, the first time. The mind didn't do it, of course. But this, the first time it happened, that the mind says, slap a new name on this dissatisfaction, on this unnatural urge. Slap a new name on it and forget it. The original of that was, even before the mind was around, that's why I said it was irrational. I went ahead and did that for you to start with. Before your mind could say, I was going to say that. Yeah, I know. The first one of slapping your name on it and get over it was that the mind started. And the man went, now I'm me. You understand? That was the end of it. Well, more or less, that's supposed to be that life, did the final winding, or the local condition, kicked you in your little tin rear and you went off. But, like a split second before it happened, some people, not everybody, that split second in a kind of non-sequential chronology which does not exist in a 3D world, but that stereo, screw it. There was like a split second before the mind actually allowed consciousness to speak, and so as soon as it did, it was dissatisfied. You understand that the problem started as soon as there could be a problem. But it's like a split second, everybody goes, wait a minute. Of course, you can't. It's like, wait a minute, and so you got a split second, and it's the world's largest freight train on the world's smallest track, and you're inside of a tunnel, and you look up and it's, wait a minute! And that's all you got. But it's like in a split second, people know, their consciousness knows, uh-oh, here comes the fun, and here comes the trouble. It knows, God, here it comes. Not a freight train, my tongue. Here it comes, not a freight train, a mind. I'll be able to think and talk. Here it comes. And at that same split second, it goes, oh no! That is the nature of binary energy in a three-dimensional world. So the original one of the mind telling man, listen, I know you're dissatisfied and upset. Then that split second, when he looked up and realized, boy, here comes fame and fortune and death. The mind said, no, slap a name on it and forget it. And so man said, okay, I'm me. That is the basis. That, by and large, is the basis of man's attempted life of passion, personally, mentally, is thinking, well, at least I'm me. I may not be much, but, by God, I'm me. And of course, that doesn't normally get it, and so you do other things. But that's the foundation. I'm me. No, I'm me, but then it has to be more than that. You can't leave it at that. Saying those that run the world, the Philistines, the middle class, the health of life, just being me won't do it. Then it has to become gradually. All right, now I'm now me, the Italian American. I am me, the Italian American Catholic. I am me, the Italian American Catholic graduate of Andover. I am me, the Italian wife and family. Got pictures in the pocket. It becomes all of that. The hobbies, wrestling fan, soccer fan, Democrat. All of that you keep adding slowly on, trying to produce more and more of some sense of passion in your life, in your intellectual life, in your personal life, in your humane life. Slapping a new name on it that brings up a cliche. Everyone here, from those that would attack professional wrestling, God forbid, but from that to people who are literally social critics about the inequities of our economic, the distribution of wealth, and etc. It's always somebody attacking Congress or the bureaucracy or us in general saying, well, here's what we're doing. Putting people in jail for stealing. We're ignoring kids that drop out of school, and then we pass some little bill and we say, well, send a policeman around to talk to them or something. And the guy will look right in the camera, look at you and say, I'll tell you what we're doing. I mean, he must be the brother of the guy that attacked professional wrestling. Suddenly, a flash of insight, he says, I'll tell you exactly what we're doing. We're putting Band-Aids on a cancer. You know, that sounds like, if you'd never heard it, that sounds like, hey, God, boy, that is a picturization right on it. That's life. That's what you're supposed to do. That is putting a name on you. That is, well, yes, I'm me. You put a Band-Aid on a cancer. Or you saw the freight train flying at you, the world's largest, on the smallest track, and you in the tunnel, and you held up a Band-Aid, like just in case. Well, I'll say, that's what... See, there is no problem there. That's exactly what's supposed to do. That is the nature of intellectual cannibalism. That's the only way that a void, an empty space, can continue to grow. It has to eat itself. There is no cure. What they're calling a cancer is the dissatisfaction of life, the open-endedness. If they could cure it, it'd be deadly. So what are you supposed to do with that kind of cancer, that kind of open space, the unfinished part of life? You're supposed to put something on it that will not work. That's the whole point. You pinhead. Here's to all of us pinheads. All of you pinheads. All of us pinheads.